Hi everyone, my name is Alan Collins. I'm going to talk to you today about, well, really some of the things we can work out and we can get a feel for ways we've never been able to by using these new full plate tectonic reconstructions deep in time, back into the Proterozoic. I'm opening up today with this image from a paper that Andrew Meredith is the first author of that's just come out in Earth Science Reviews, which is a 1 billion years present full plate reconstruction of the planet. And you can see here, it's a bit messy with all these sort of lines, but these are the inferred plate boundaries we have throughout this time that allow us to construct these full plate reconstructions. So my co-authors here, I'd like to acknowledge and acknowledge the work of Morgan Blades, who's done a lot of the geology in one of the critical areas in the Arabian-Nubian Shield that we need to try and work out the tectonic geography of the times to allow us to reconstruct the world through here. Andrew Meredith has done most of the legwork and actually created these things. He's a whiz with G plates and making these things. And John Foden, who's been a real mentor throughout for us doing this sort of work. So, what are full plate models? Well, first of all, full plate models are a sort of an evolution from the models they're used to looking at for the deep time in the Proterozoic. And these are sort of continental drift models, usually paleomagnetic based, where we have some solutions for the latitude or the position of different continents at times, and we just move them from one to the other without really any consideration too much, or maybe very small consideration of what that implies for the consumption of crust between them, or reduction of crust between these different pieces of continent. Full plates are just what they say. It's where if we have continents moving towards each other, we have to have subduction zones consuming the oceanic crust between them. If they're moving away from each other, we must have divergent margins. It brings in the geology because it's really about the evolution of plate boundaries. So as well as well-constrained paleomagnetic solutions for different continents at different times, we bring in the geology that tells us about the interactions, the consumptions, the evidence for ancient subduction zones, rift systems, and ocean basins. So it's developing a full plate circuit. This in itself provides an awful lot of new constraints, kinematic and geological constraints. How fast do plates move? Do plate tectonics work similarly to how they work in the Phanerozoic, which is really plates moving quite similar directions for quite large periods of time and similar velocities, punctuated by times of real plate reconfigurations where a plate may have been consumed, completely subducted if it's an oceanic plate, where two plates might have merged, where two continents have collided, two bits of continental crust have collided. That creates the reconfiguration of the plate tectonic circuit throughout the planet. Does that happen in the past? I'm going to talk about an idea that suggests that I think we can see that at one time in the past by looking at these full plate models. The full plate models we have at the moment, this is the 2020 model, the Meredith 2020 model. It is derived from a whole series of continental drift models originally, and then full plate with particularly Lee et al. 2008 and 2013, and Torskog et al. 2012 models, and then a whole series of full plate models through different bits of time from the modern Earth back in through the Phanerozoic, Paleozoic, and then right down to Neoproterozoic. Meredith et al. 2017 was put in here, and then this then amalgamates everything together into Meredith et al. 2020, which we've just published. So, what do these models look like? Well, here's just a snapshot at the beginning of this, and this is a reconstruction for the world around about 1 billion years ago, with sort of an eastern part of Rodinia here and a western part of Rodinia sort of beginning to be configured through here. We've got a large Neoproterozoic India with South China attached to it, and really we're going to see the attachment of a lot of these Central Asian terrains, including the Tarim, through there in the early part of the Neoproterozoic, to make India, South China, Tarim, a really major continent through the early part of the Neoproterozoic. And that gets to something that's more familiar in the Cambrian here, a Gondwana, very very southern hemisphere focused. Notice also that even in this reconstruction, how the continents are really confined into the southern hemisphere. Okay, I'm just going to play this through just to show you what these sort of models can look like. Here's Australia, here's India and South China, North America, bits of Africa, bits of Madagascar, and all this detail in the Neoproterozoic, the Arabian-Nubian Shield through here. It's South America and blue coming through here as well. This will just take us down through this time period. I'm particularly interested in the Tonian, the middle to the late Tonian, and going down into the Phanerozoic. And you can see what's happened really is that India has moved from very high latitudes to really quite low latitudes. It's come and slid down, consuming an ocean here. It's still open with this ocean, this Mozambique Ocean here. And through the rest of the Neoproterozoic, we'll see this India being dragged down into colliding with the African margin through here. And a lot of the evidence for this comes from the geology in this region here, from Madagascar, southern India, East Africa, and particularly up here in Saudi Arabia, northeast Africa, and over to Oman, and even into bits of now in India. Just to emphasize the importance of this is some figures that Morgan Blades put together quite recently. Just to show in color here, all these are ages of various systems. The circle is the uranium lead, but it's got lots of different isotopic systems here. And you can really pick out how young, or in the Neoproterozoic, the Arabian-Nubian Shield, which is this sort of area, is. We've got these little pie charts here. Again, the colors reflecting the colors here, the reds being sort of 500 million years. Everything that's a yellow or a red is younger than about 850 million years. And you can see very, very young series of ages through here, and also down here in the Western Ethiopian Shield, large bit of crust exposed in that area. Whereas when you get into the sort of central exposed parts in Chad and Sudan, you've got a lot more older material. This is also reflected in the less dense data set of hafnium. This is epsilon hafnium values corrected to time, corrected to uranium lead age, many fewer data, but you can see again the old parts of Chad, Sudan through here, all the very evolved crust in those sort of areas. These lighter colors, these are positive values, but they're still not super duper juvenile, whereas when you get up into Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, and Sudan and Northeast Sudan up here, you're getting these very, very positive values, right up into sort of positive 10 values. Lots of new crust. It's really the evidence. This stuff is all formed during the Neoproterozoic or being deformed and metamorphosed during the Neoproterozoic. We can use that information to tell us what those plate margins were doing at this time. If we put it into this sort of model here, we can see that we're now interpreting that data in terms of a whole series of sutures. And the main thing I want to point out here is throughout the Arabian-Nubian Shield, we have these early east, northeast, southwest sutures that are sort of in early 700 million years. They seem to have been sutured. And then they are sort of cut by these later, much more north-south suture zones. The beta suture here and the Karaf suture over here in Sudan. And these ones here, these are down into the sort of 600s. So there's a sort of a fundamental kinematic change of subduction represented this time. And when we put that on a globe, that kinematic change, these are sort of the now north-south zones, and these are the now sort of east, northeast, west, southwest suture zones. And so that change to subduction from what is now represented by the north-south suture zones, but in a reconstructed model would have been much more latitudinal subduction zones. We interpret this as reflecting a change in increased subduction of the Mozambique Ocean, and also a dragging of India south as this Mozambique Ocean is subducted. So these suture zones, this change in kinematic direction of subduction is reflected by the dragging of India down the other end of those plates, down and consuming the Mozambique Ocean. So what's that done from 850 to 750 to 700 to 600? It's dragged this large Neoproterozoic India, including South China, south, consuming this Mozambique Ocean. It's cutting off ocean circulation in the Mozambique Ocean and dragging the continents into the southern hemisphere, making by the Ediacara a very strange world where we have continents in the southern hemisphere and only relatively limited ocean basins, whereas the northern hemisphere appears to be an ocean, a water world. What's happening at that time elsewhere? So we have what appears to be a plate reconfiguration around about some 750 to 720 million years, represented in the Arabian-Nubian Shield. But of course, this is the same sort of time that we have the opening of the Pacific Ocean and the formation of the Adelaide superbasin and the Centralian superbasin in Australia, and the reconstructed Australia through here, and the beginning of the formation of the Pacific Ocean basin, sometime around here. Andrew Meredith and us, our group, published a paper in 2017 when we argued that just from kinematic constraints, we really can't have the opening of the Pacific Ocean any later than around about 720 million years. Otherwise, it just means we're going to move things too fast and too rapidly. So what does that lead on to? That leads on to, as I said, this northern hemisphere water world. These are just two plots, just taken directly from the reconstruction, the Meredith et al. 2020 reconstruction, just looking at the amount of continental crust, I should say, not total crust, total continental crust in the northern hemisphere in blue, and in the southern hemisphere in red. And what we're seeing here is the crust moving to the southern hemisphere and really getting away from the northern hemisphere, and just putting on the different glaciations to the Neoproterozoic here as a bit of a reference. This is another way of seeing it. This is just histograms of just the amount of continental crust in these different bands. Again, these won't be completely correct. We will have missed some. These will probably be minimums actually, but really but I'm quite confident the distribution is close to real. And again, certainly this pattern of the crust moving into the southern hemisphere, leaving the northern hemisphere as an ocean. I'm confident that is real. Right, so I hope I've showed you how we can start to use these to then start to feed into thinking about what it's doing to the greater Earth system and creating a very strange planet, a continental southern hemisphere, oceanic northern hemisphere. What is that doing to ocean circulation, distribution of nutrients, weather through this time period? Thank you very much for your attention.